So this dyno day was put on by Mule Mobile Dyno and my buddy Greg. I don't believe his shop has a name, but I'll put his info along with Mule info in the description. So this first vehicle is essentially a bone stock Ford Festiva.
I've seen a lot of people do these in third. Try it in third.
Try this car in third
Because
right,
with the big wheels, fourth is an overdrive now.
It's still 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what matters.
Yeah, you want the direct 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Fourth is 1-to-1 in these training.
Like power really shouldn't change if we do it in third, but we could do it in third.
See if it'll spin it up. You can rev this thing to $6 grand, man.
It wouldn't go past 4,500.
Punch it. Give it a quick clutch with it on the floor. Like a two-stroke.
Basically what happened here is the car didn't produce enough power in fourth gear to overcome the eddy brake on the dyno. So the car just kind of sat there at like 4,000 RPM just struggling to accelerate. So to overcome the situation, they just dynoed the car in third gear instead of fourth.
Woo!
53 horsepower. That sounds right.
53.
So yeah, 53 at the wheels really isn't that bad when you consider that the car is only supposed to make 63 at the crank. So here's a B-body Impala with a couple of bolt-ons. This was basically the car that everyone was waiting to see on the dyno that day. If you're a member of the Ford Festiva community, you probably know this car and you probably know the owner. If you're not, you're probably pretty curious about what the hell this thing is. This is a Ford Festiva Shogun, or should I say faux gun, because this is a replica of a Shogun, but it's a pretty damn good replica. Chances are if you've seen one of these in person, it was probably a replica, because only 7 were ever made and Jay Leno has 2 of them. Basically what the Shogun was Ford took a Taurus SHO engine and transmission and put it behind the back seat of a Ford Festiva. That's pretty much it. I mean, there were some body differences and things like that, but for the most part it was a Ford Festiva with a Taurus SHO engine shoved in the back. So this replica doesn't follow the exact styling of the actual Shogun. The body kit's actually completely custom. I believe the rear fenders are from a boat trailer. The side skirts were fence posts or something along the lines of that. So the engine is basically stock other than the addition of what I believe is a GT35 turbo. Now this thing isn't tuned as far as I know. It's just running on, I believe, the factory map sensor, so it's only running like 4 or 5 PSI. So yeah, no one really wanted to go after the Impala. Kind of a hard act to follow, so I went ahead and volunteered. So yeah, this was pretty nerve-wracking. I really thought the car was just going to come apart. This was actually my first time winding the car out as far as I did, you know, taking it all the way to the 7,500 RPM red line. So yeah, after my third pull, I think I was actually shaking as I got out of the car, just because I was so afraid something was going to go wrong. Overall, I was pretty pleased. The car made 310 at, I want to say, 60-something hundred and 265 or 275 foot-pounds of torque. I can't remember exactly. I'll put the chart in there somewhere.
So you might want to throw a fan up front for the intercooler.
Standard liability form.
This was at 17 psi. I was very tempted to crank this up to 20 or 22 just to see what it really had with this turbo, but I haven't really tuned any of those parts of the map, so I just didn't. I mean, this wasn't meant as a tuning session. This was just, you know, a dyno day, so I didn't want to take up too much time. But in hindsight, I really wish I had cranked it up just to see just how much it could have put out. One of the major things I noticed was that the power begins to dive off pretty, well, not severely, but you know, the power starts to dive off after 6,000 RPM. I believe that's either because of the log turbo manifold or the fact that I'm running a NA intake manifold. Most people, when they turbocharge these engines for front-wheel drive cars, they switch to a GTX or GTR style manifold because they flow a lot better than the stock manifold. So that's certainly the next thing on my list is a new intake manifold.
First gear, I want to make sure it's not bouncing around or doing anything funny. Bring it up to the fourth gear, just like your street driving. Fourth gear, 1-1, right? Or 1-1. That four?
That's third.
Hold it at 2,000 as tight as you can. Alright, when I give you the thumbs up, you can do the full pull.
Alright.
At the end of the pull, clutch in, put it in neutral, and don't hit the brake.
Okay. Not bad. How much boost was that?
Right there, man. 295 was
295. Nice.
295 is your actual peak.
Alright.
It's a pretty good looking tune. 295 is scooping off it.
I put it in neutral. It just stalled on me. It does that sometimes. 310. All right, I'll leave it at that.
You just want to do 2 pulls? Okay, for 3.
Yeah, I'll do. I'll do.
All right. Ready when you are.
Yeah. Pretty good, yeah, a little bit of heat soak probably.
But that's a pretty good consistent number out of a turbo.
Yeah, nice. Cool.
Right, shut it up.
Consistent.
That's pretty awesome.
That's a lot of horsepower.
That's Camaro horsepower.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's V8. I mean,
That's no, like literally my LS1.
So yeah, there was actually another Escort there. I believe this one was running a GTX engine with a GTR ECU, or vice versa. I can't really remember.
First gear. Hold on. First gear. Running out of fuel or something up top there. Kind of dips. I mean, you were making peak power at 6 too.
half a turn.
So it was at this point we realized that it was actually running really rich up top because it was spewing black smoke out the back. So we just cranked the boost up to compensate.
Right at 20.
Damn, I know who got their money worth.
What's that?
Well, it depends on what are you paying for, reliability or?
$900.
Yeah, I was gonna say at that point at $900, it's kind of like fuck it.
Who cares what it paid at $900? That's the beautiful thing.
Hey, it was $950
Oh, yeah.
because of that Dyno pole. Right. No, you can shut it off.
I got guys that come here.
So don't mind the blue smoke, it's actually from the turbo that's on the car. The engine's in pretty good shape. So from what I understand, it has a GT35, I believe, one of the eBay varieties. It's running on the stock ECM, so I think it's just running on the stock map sensor, and that's what it's relying on for fuel compensation. So it's only running like 4 or 5 psi, so keep that in mind. So yeah, on this run it put out 233 horse and 249 torque, which is pretty impressive considering that these engines are spec'd at 220 at the crank. And this is through a automatic transmission too, so keep that in mind. So considering drivetrain loss, 230 at the wheels is pretty impressive. Another thing to note is to look at this curve, this power curve. I mean, this thing has a pretty decently wide power band, especially when you consider how light this car is. I mean, this thing would be awesome on a road course or autocross. So to continue the trend of oddball cars, here's a 4-cylinder Fox body. So you may notice this car spinning and cutting up on this pole. Turns out the fuel pressure regulator was unplugged, so wasn't getting any fuel pressure. Apparently it had just popped off at some point and everything cleared up once it got reconnected. So yeah, that's basically it. Pretty fun day. Pretty interesting group of cars, not your typical dyno day. You know, we all know each other because of Greg, and Greg's kind of influenced us on the type of projects we bought, you know, so. But like I said, all in all, pretty fun day. Pretty pleased with the car. It did what I expected. You know, I was expecting somewhere around 330-ish, but like I said, my tune is still fairly conservative. My timing's really conservative. All my runs are at 17 psi, 17-ish. I think the first run was probably like 15, but second run was at 17. So yeah, the dyno day kind of shined some light on some things I probably need to address, like my intake manifold and possibly the turbo manifold. You know, if I plan to reach my goal of 400, the log style manifold probably isn't the best. You know, I've seen it done, but it's not ideal. It doesn't flow the best, so I'll probably go to, or I'm playing with the idea of going with like a mini ram style. You know, I don't think a long tube is really necessary. will look cool, but you know, I think like a little mini short ram will work. Trying to find a GTR intake manifold or GTX. I can't remember which one it is. Whichever of the two is the better of the manifolds. I've decided I'm going to switch to E85 because that will definitely make my goal of 400 a lot easier. I could probably get to 350 just by keeping everything the way it is and switching to E85. So that's in the works. You know, I'll be doing a video on that. Do a video on the intake. Definitely do a video if I make a new exhaust manifold. But yeah, other than that, 310 at the wheels and a 2,400 pound car or less, probably a little less, car stripped. It's pretty fun. It's good to know where I stand. It's good to know that everything I've done is kind of paying off. And you know, so thanks to Greg for hosting at his shop, and also obviously thanks to Muletown Mobile Dyno for providing the dyno. Like I said, it was really great. It was really a lot of fun, you know, the dynoing itself, but it was also just a lot of fun just to hang out with a bunch of like-minded people. So, until next time.